All right, so it was a messy, messy weekend in terms of weather on the racetrack at Fairgrounds, at Gulfstream, at Tampa. I have a little bee in my bonnet about one of the races at Gulfstream. But the big 3-year-old action, the big stakes action of the weekend was Saturday in New Orleans at Fairgrounds, highlighted by the Risen Star Stakes. As far as I know, it's the first mile and an eighth prep this year for 3-year-olds. And it was won by Sierra Leone, who's a Chad Brown trained horse, $1 million plus son of gun runner, making his third career start. And he came from way out of the clouds to run down Track Phantom, who had a very easy lead in that race. And I think that that's kind of a little bit of a demerit to him that he wasn't able to finish that race off. But Sierra Leone is very exciting. I always question whether or not these horses are really meant for Derby success because it takes a lot. It takes a real pace meltdown to be that deep of a closer and win the Kentucky Derby. You think of a horse like Monarchos or Mind That Bird. Like, they really got to be suicidal up front for you to be able to make up that kind of ground past that many horses. But it really was a really dazzling performance on a complete mess of a racetrack. I have a lot of respect for horses, jockeys too, but horses who were able to dig through that mud and keep trying because it's a tiring surface. John, what was your impression of Sierra Leone on Saturday?
Well, it's ironic that you said that he came from the clouds because there was a lot of things coming from the clouds, whether it was Sierra Leone or rain or sleet or dogs and cats living together. I mean, it was just a slop fest at the fairgrounds. And I think the powers that be that own and train Sierra Leone, that's the Magner Smith Group and Chad Brown, respectively. I think they were trying to get the horse to be a little closer because they put blinkers on him for the first time. And my guess is that they probably said to Tyler Gaffalione, hey, at the break, if the speed wants to go, let him go. But I want you to be closer than 12 lengths like you were, for the Remsen. And it didn't play out that way. Now, for him, it was probably better that it didn't play out that way because he was able to nail Track Phantom at the end of the race. But, to me, Joe, I don't know. When you have a surface like this, I don't know if it answers as many questions as it should based on, the winner in the second place and Catching Freedom, who finished third. I just don't know if it answered any questions yet because it's such an unusual situation where not only was it raining and it was a wind, but it was also like a night race practically. I mean, I think they ran the race at the equivalent of like 7:30 our time, and it was dark. So I don't know if that had anything to do with with what was going on. But for all intents and purposes, it was Track Phantom's race to win. The horse was in front, well in hand. Rosario was doing a great job. And I was actually surprised that he got caught at the end because I really thought that it was setting up for him perfectly. I think it was a good, solid field like we talked about before the race. I think that you're going to see, I think they announced that Sierra Leone is going to go to Keeneland to run in the Bluegrass, which makes sense, from a timing standpoint. I think also that they were trying to, now that they've proven themselves that they can run Sierra Leone outside of Aqueduct, that he can handle different surfaces, that they're probably going to want to try to keep him closer to Louisville for those upcoming races. But, again, Joe, we talk all the time about, do 7-figure yearling purchases ever turn out? And here was a horse that was sold for $2.3 million. Guess where? Fasig-Tipton, that's right, for $2.3 million. And already, the horse is showing that he's going to be a stallion, prospect, and rightfully so. Incidentally, our friends over at Arian Pedigrees sent us a quick note. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but Sierra Leone is a gun runner out of a Malibu Moon mare. Say that 10 times fast. And that cross has occurred 8 times for horses of racing age. 4 of those progeny are graded stake winners.
Wow.
How's that for a match?
Shout out to the sponsor, Arian Pedigrees, for that nugget. And yeah, I mean, Malibu Moon he's one of the coolest stallions of all time. Horse that did nothing on the racetrack, basically was brilliant, but got hurt early and turned into a great sire and a great broodmare sire. If you cashed Sierra Leone on Saturday and you didn't cash him the time before, I'm happy for you, because if you go back and watch the Remsen, that was one of the worst beats you could ever take. The horse looked like gin at the 16th pole. He's going to win by open legs,
Right.
and somehow the other horse comes back and tags him on the wire. That was a horrendous beat. So I hope he got the get back on Saturday. You know, it wasn't a huge price, but
Right.
you know, our horse was, I think, much the best. You know, I did mention the weather, and that was a story this weekend. And I just want to play this video real quick. So we had a horse, West Point had a horse running on Saturday, or on Sunday in the 6th race at Gulfstream Park named Miss Enchanted. And she's the one, she popped out to the front, went too fast, and then backed up early. And it was run in a driving monsoon. And like it's one of those races you could barely see anything until they came out of the fog, like in the last eighth of a mile. And I just wonder, like, how safe is it to be running these kind of races in those kind of conditions? Like, I always, I think that, Naira and at Saratoga has gotten a lot of grief for canceling a lot of races and moving a lot of races off the turf. But I think, especially in this day and age, like, you have to exercise the utmost caution when it comes to these things. And I don't know, that it was one of those races where I went from like rooting for her to win to being like, dude, just come back in one piece and make sure she crossed the wire and everything. I mean, John, like, what's your feeling on that? Like, it seemed to me like there was no reason they couldn't either have delayed the race or canceled the rest of the card, because it was an absolute mess. That was like Wizard of Oz type shit.
Right.
And they ran the race through it. I didn't feel great about that. What do you think?
Yeah, it was one of those days, Joe, where you actually see the horses when they're running, that they have their heads bowed down because they don't want to get mud and rain in their faces. That's how egregious the weather was at that point. I think management for the racetracks are in a bad spot when it comes to last minute cancellations. I know from a safety standpoint, as an owner, you want to make sure your horses are always safe and always in a good, solid environment. That being said, there's so much that goes into getting a horse ready for a race and getting the horse to be peaking and getting the race to go, and then getting the right post position and all the way through. Again, none of that supersedes safety, obviously. But part of it also is that the jockeys have a say in what's going on also. And if they feel like that the racetrack is unsafe, and we see it a lot up here in the north, especially in the colder weather, if they feel like it's uneven or that it's breaking or that the track is just not safe or it's too cold, whatever the reason is, they get together and they cancel, racing like after the first couple races. And that's totally acceptable. Yeah, it's disappointing, but you also want to make sure that everybody, the equine athletes and the jockeys, all come back safely. So, if they're willing to ride the races, then I think that it's management, it's a tough decision for management to make as far as should we cancel when the jockeys are willing to ride. But yeah, that was a tough race to watch. And you go from rooting your horse to win to rooting your horse to come home safely. And that's a really uneasy feeling as an owner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like, between the jockeys or the management, someone should have stepped in and been like, hey, like, this does not look super safe to be racing in right now. Right. Let's do a little delay, see if the weather passes, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's worth discussing in this climate. Like, obviously you're going to have off tracks, you're going to have sloppy tracks, you're going to have inclement weather, but I don't know. I just adding another like scary variable like that to already like a tumultuous time where we're doing everything we can to keep horses and jockeys safe. Like I said, it made me a little scary. It made me a little scared, but I'm glad everybody came home safe, and we move on to another day at beautiful Gulfstream Park.
Right. Hey, Joe, can we talk a little bit about what a weekend gun runner had?
Yeah, I mean it's every weekend, but yeah, we can talk about this weekend.
But this more so than any. I mean, we're just talking about the winner of the Risen Star, which is a grade 2. He had Intricate and Perfect Shot finish second and third in the Rachel Alexandra. He had Recharge and Candy Isle finish 1-2, the Gun Runner Exacta in the Sunland Oaks. Dymatic is one of the favorites for the Rebel this weekend, and Locked. Let's not forget about Locked. Who hasn't been seen since November of last year. The Pletcher trained horse is going to be in the Fountain of Youth as well. I mean, it's just everything is coming up gun runner. And the reason why I'm bringing it up isn't just because, no shit, Green. Like you rattled off the top stallion in the world, or in the country at least. His progeny. But the other reason why I'm bringing it up is because remember when we had this 100 and whatever mare, 140 mare cap, and everyone was worried about diversification in the genes? Well, here's a perfect example of an outcross that is coming in and dominating our gene pool. Candy Ride and a lot of the female family of Gunrunner is from South America, is Argentinian. And shout out to our fans in Argentina because they breed good horses. Woo! But the point is that, like, here's a horse that came in and is basically a complete outcross to a majority of the genes that we have here in the United States. And his gene pool now is going to be dominant. Candy Ride is going to be a dominant sire of sires, whether it's between Gunrunner or Trilling Candy, and Candy Ride himself is still relatively young. But there are horses that are coming in that are outside of our gene pool that are making a difference. And to me, that's more of an impact than saying, let's cap and artificially limit the number of mares that a stallion is mated to. So again, I know I get on a soapbox about outcrossing and how important it is, but here's a perfect example. I mean, Gunrunner is taking the industry by storm right now. And I think you can make the case that Indian Charlie did the exact same thing 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I loved Candy Ride. Like, he burst on the scene like when I was first following racing, and I'll never forget that Pacific Classic. It's only 4-horse field, but it was basically a big match race between him and Medaglia d'Oro.
Right.
Medaglia d'Oro was obviously a superstar, and Candy Ride blew him away. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to keep it together and race beyond that. But yeah, like, I love that Candy Stripes line, or that Argentinian line, right. Viva Argentina, as always on this show. And yeah, like, he's to me like one of the most top 5 most influential stallions of the last 25 years. And Gunrunner is only gonna, build upon that legacy. And it's a great point that you make, like introducing some South American blood or some outside blood into the very homogenous pool, the increasingly homogenous pool of stallions and mares that we have mainly in Kentucky. Right. That's a big deal. And yeah, Gunrunner he just keeps reaching new heights. It's incredible to watch.